Okay. All right, so we are good to go. All right. Hey, everyone. Thanks for being here today. This is Intro to Agile with Mr. Patrick here. All right. I think we're going to start by just introducing ourselves really quickly. And so I am Kurt. My name is Kurt Brown, and I am a librarian at Charlotte Mecklenburg Library. I work in the Job Help Center. All right. And I'm going to pass it on to our special guest, Patrick.
All right, thanks. Hi, I'm Patrick McElhaney. I am a software engineer, a Charlotte native. Like to brag about that. I went to Providence High School, but I feel like I really belong in South Neck because that's where I grew up, and then we moved like right in ninth grade. Yeah, so I'm excited to talk with you all. Are there any more introductions, or are we just going to jump into this?
Uh, we have Christina here from Queen City Bites. Did you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hey everyone. I will be helping host this meetup today. My name is Christina Veal. I am one of the co-organizers for Queen City Bites. Thank you all so much for attending. By the way, this is recorded, so if you want to show your Zoom video, feel free. If not, no worries. Again, for those that have just joined, we do have live transcript availability open to you. If you'd like to enable that at the very bottom of your Zoom screen, go ahead and click the live transcript button. There's a couple of configurations there that you can select from. But other than that, we've got a lot of really great sessions with CML that are upcoming along with this one. So just continue to check in with our meetup page. We have a Steam showcase that's coming up next month. You can reserve there or online through the library. So yeah, what about you, Christy? Would you like to introduce?
I was just going to add that I'm Christy Atkins. I'm also a librarian, and Kurt and I work together on a library team called Library Code Lab. And we have partnered with Christina and her team at Queen City Bites over the past couple of years, both for in-person programs when we were doing in-person programs and for virtual programs during the past since 2020, since mid-March or mid-2020, just to bring a lot of different coding and computer science-based programs to the community. Please, like Christina said, continue to check both the QC Bytes meetup page for upcoming opportunities and the library's online calendar. We can share those links with you guys at the end, as well as a possible brief survey to hear what kind of programs you'd possibly like to see us offer in the future. But we again just thank Patrick and Christina for being able to present their wealth of knowledge to you all today, and we encourage you to ask questions. And thank you again.
Yeah, thank you. This is a Q&A style session, so if you do all have questions related to Agile, related to what Patrick does on a day-to-day basis, we're really going to be going through what Patrick's experience has been like and learn more about really all things Agile. So feel free to bring your questions after Patrick kicks us off.
All right.
Yep, so feel free to type your questions in the chat. All right. Or you can just save your question until the end. All right. So Patrick, go ahead and take it away.
All right. So while you're all thinking of questions, I'll go ahead and tell you a little story about how this came to be. Originally, when Christina and I connected about, doing a presentation on what is Agile and what does that look like from the perspective of someone who is going to work and practicing it every day as a software engineer. We had talked about, telling a story, and this was wonderful advice from Christina, which I took too literally. And I had like in my head like this big grand thing about how I was going to tell like a sort of semi-fictional story about a person like in the day of the life of a software engineer, and like draw from all like real world experiences that I had. And I had this big plan of like, okay, here's a story, and then I put together all these slides and had all these funny like slides with characters from the office and whatnot. And I was going to dive in and talk to you about the different people I've met along my day and what their jobs were like. And when I got all the slides done and I got to this weekend, I was going to do a couple of practice runs. Like the whole thing just like collapsed under its own weight. It was just way too complicated. And I realized, oh no, this is not going to work. Like I'm just going to completely like befuddle and lose you if I try and do this thing. And what I learned from that experience is that my approach to putting together this presentation was counter to everything that I've learned in the last 25 years about how to develop software using the so-called Agile approach. It was really just this big complicated design up front, and then you put all the pieces together at the end and you expect it to work, and that just doesn't work. I mean, if you look at anything, in the history of engineering, like it never works that way. Like, for example, the Wright brothers, if you look at how they were able to get things done, it was through a series of small experiments. I'm like, okay, well, let's see, can we make a kite that works a little bit better? And then, okay, can we make this thing that, is able to lift off the ground for just a few seconds and a few feet, and just slowly but steadily like increase their learning and work up from something small to something big. And eventually they got it working well enough they could put an engine in it, and the weight of the engine wasn't too much. They could still, maintain flight. And then, eventually they were able to actually get there and soar and continue having the momentum and the lift. And, they had a working airplane. And that is the idea of how Agile is supposed to work. So going back to this talk, what I should have done instead of this, big plan and then it all comes together at the end, what would have been better is if I had come up with an elevator pitch, sort of explaining in 1 minute, this is what Agile is. And then once I had that perfected, I should have gone to like a 5-minute lightning talk and, just expand on a little bit more, put some slides together. And then from there, once I was happy with that, I should have gone to a 15-minute talk and, throw in some more slides and just stretch out a bit until I got to a 45-minute, like end-to-end, like this is good. The quality started out good when it was just 1 minute. And as I expanded, the quality never dropped. Like we maintained that level of consistency and quality all the way through. And that in a nutshell is what Agile is all about. It's about, let's start with something small and let's build up to something bigger and more complex. It's that, and then also just the way that we interact with people. It's instead of this command and control style of management where there's sort of the chief of the factory and then there's all the workers who each have their individual job. It's more of a team, people who collaborate together. Like a good example is like the Navy SEALs is an example of something in the military where they discovered that if you can get a group of 6 people who really trust each other, who've worked together a lot, they can do incredible things that you can't do with a well-regimented army of 100, just because of the synergies you have with people being able to bring their whole selves to work and apply their talents. So really in a nutshell, like those two aspects are what Agile is all about. Since I don't see any questions yet, I'm just going to keep talking.
I think we could move into what a day in your life is like. So can we talk about that?
Absolutely. So again, I'm a software engineer. I started out, so I guess I'll go back to just explain. Yeah, I like to tell the story of how I started out. So I started out, like, I got into this industry when I was like 12 years old, and my parents brought home a computer. And I was the only person in the neighborhood who had a computer, but didn't have a Nintendo. So like, what am I going to do with this? And like, we also like didn't really have any software to run on it. But I noticed like in the in the manual for the computer, there was instructions on the basic programming language. So eventually I figured out, well, okay, I can't play games on here, but maybe I can learn to make my own game. And, that was something that I was just really excited when I, typed in my name and I got the computer to talk back to me. Hello, Patrick. And again, just building on that little first success and then adding to it a little bit by little bit. And so by the time I graduated high school, like I knew a little bit about programming, and I was able to go and find a job like building web pages. And yeah, anyway, so now what does my day look like now? So typically I will come into the office, and the first thing that we do is we have what we call a stand-up meeting, which is the team all gets together. And if we were physically in the office, what this would look like is we are all standing together like around a whiteboard. And on the whiteboard, we have these index cards, where on each index card, there's like with marker, we've written down a task of what we're going to do. We call these user stories. And the idea behind a user story is here's a story about how a person would use the software that we're building. So just to take a very simple example, like let's just say that we're building an application that's a to-do list, like your reminders on your iPhone or whatever the Android version is. A user story might be something like, I want to be able to set a reminder on a task so that I'll be reminded, at a particular time to do this task. And so from that, we take it and, we figure out, okay, as a team, we sort of talk about how we're going to make this work. And like, for example, like I'll usually be working on the user interface. And so I'll say, okay, well, today I'm going to work on the part where we display the time that the reminder is going to happen. And someone else might, be working on the scheduling part where they'll make the alarm go off at that particular time, and that sort of thing. And we have on this board, there's like a list of columns, and each column represents the state of where that story is in our process. So our process will start off with an engineer picks up the story and starts writing the code. The next step is once the code is written, it goes into like a peer review process. We call it a code review, which is another engineer is looking at the code and seeing what changed and providing feedback or asking questions, just making sure that we've sort of dotted our I's and crossed our T's, and the changes that we made are understandable, that, if I'm out sick tomorrow, that somebody else will be able to come in and see the changes that I've made and be able to make some sense of them. Or, if worse, if I got hit by a bus, then someone else will be able to come in and be able to maintain this. That's the second column. And the third column is quality assurance. And that's where we have people who their specialty is to test the software, make sure that it does everything that it's supposed to do under all sorts of weird conditions. So they'll test what we call the happy path, which is like a normal use case. And then they'll test like all sorts of weird things like, okay, well, what if somebody sets a reminder at midnight on the 11th? Well, does that mean like tonight, or does that mean that this morning was midnight? And sort of that sort of thing. And so when it's in the QA column, somebody from the QA specialty will come in and run through their tests and give us feedback on, is everything working the way we expect, or maybe they found some condition where it's not working the way we expect, or maybe it's just wasn't clear what the expectation was, but it's hard to anticipate everything up front. And then we'll have a conversation about that and be able to move forward. And then the next column typically will be something like, it's ready for release. So the code has been written, it's been tested, now we're ready to, for example, push it out to the App Store. And the final column is that it has been released and it's out there and people can use it. And basically it's done. I mean, software's never done. We're always changing it. We're always finding bugs. We're always improving, that sort of thing. But as far as that particular story, I can set a reminder and be reminded at that particular time, like that's done. That's functionality that's available in users' hands. So anyway, that's the first part of my day is like just literally 15 minutes, everyone looking at that board and understanding where all the work is, like what's in QA, what's in code review, what's in development. And we make sure we go through each card and we make sure that each one is able to move forward. And, sometimes there will be what we call an impediment, something is stuck. Like, for example, example of impediment might be, well, I'm working on this authentication workflow where, I'm logging it, I'm testing that, I can log in and I can see my family members' tasks, but I can't test it because the authentication server is not working right now. And I need someone to help me figure out, what's going on with that. And then someone else will say, okay, yeah, I can help you with that. Anyway, so, and that all happens like really fast. Like that's a 15-minute meeting. And then we all go in different directions. And the next thing that'll happen is, maybe like I'll start working on some code by myself. Sometimes we do what we call pair programming, which is two people working together. I see, Christina, you got your hand raised.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Patrick, we do have a question in the chat. Someone asks, is Agile mainly used by backend developers?
It is used by all kinds of developers. So I'm a front-end developer. That's my specialty. So it's used by backend, it's used by front end. It's even used by people who work on embedded systems, like hardware kind of things. So one of the most popular Agile methodology you hear about is called Scrum. And they like to brag about, there's some project in Seattle or Portland, I think, where people are working on like this open source electric vehicle. And it's just like a bunch of tinkerers and people online, like not even physically there, but like somehow they're like contributing ideas and plans and things. And like they use the Scrum methodology. So yeah, it's really used, it can be used by everyone.
I also think not just for developers, but also really all teams that are trying to work in small incremental processes. So, mostly the tech field, I believe, is using it. However, there are other industries that have started to branch out and use Agile approaches, especially within their tech departments. But really, to your point, Patrick, I think not just software developers use it, but there are other roles within the Agile methodology, like your product owner, your Scrum Master, and more. Patrick had mentioned, how do we remove impediments? That's often a role for a Scrum Master to help out with. They are often what's called the shepherd and really work with Patrick and his team to help them out in removing those impediments and making sure that they can continue their work without being distracted by outside folks like stakeholders or clients or things like that. So yeah, that's a great question. They had also asked essentially, so any role with product management?
Yes, in fact, what's happening a lot is people who traditionally had the title of project manager, they are now becoming scrum masters. And the role is very similar. It's just the approach that you take is just a little bit different, because the goal is for the team to be self-organizing. Like everyone sort of works together and figures out what needs to be done, versus having like tasks assigned out to individuals. And so the role of the project manager is not so much keeping tabs on who's doing what and when, but more becoming like a coach and helping the team be more effective at working together and coming up with a plan and moving the ball forward, helping us to achieve our goals, which is always some form of helping the customer. And yeah, like Christina said, I mean, this can be used anywhere. I mean, this could be used in a sales environment. If you've got a team of salespeople who are working together towards a common goal, like it could be used there. Yeah, it's really, I don't think there's any place where you can say, oh, Agile doesn't apply there. I think the specific application may be slightly different, but I think the general principles are really everywhere. Yes, thank you for mentioning that. Yeah, Kanban comes from automotive. So really a lot of these ideas, they come out of manufacturing in Japan, and particularly Toyota. So, Henry Ford, had the assembly line, and we figured out, instead of having like the people move from one vehicle to another, it's more efficient to have the vehicle move to the people. And Toyota has just a bunch of really interesting ideas that moves that forward even more. And a lot of them are kind of technical. One of the most interesting ones I like is this idea of the andon cord, which is when you're a worker on the line and whatever you're working on, if there's any kind of problem, like, something doesn't fit properly or something, like you are not only allowed, but you are expected to go and pull this cord that stops the entire line, so that your team can all swarm together and like address whatever problem you're facing. And nothing moves forward until that problem is addressed. And what happens is when you're taking care of problems immediately, as soon as they're noticed, the level of quality goes way up. And even though like it's expensive for the line to be stopped, the gains that you're getting in quality like drastically outweigh the time that you've lost while the line was stopped. And yeah, just a lot of these ideas in Scrum and Kanban, they come directly out of that manufacturing context.
I was going to say, I see Christina. I was going to say we have some questions coming in, which is lovely. Please feel free to ask more questions. So there's a question before that one. So one question is, do you use Jira?
Yes, we do use Jira. There's a couple of different. So what is Jira? So Jira is. So I talked about that physical board. We have the note cards. What Jira is like an electronic version of that, and 99% of teams now are not using the physical board anymore. They're using an online version. So yes, there's a couple of other similar projects. Microsoft has one called Azure DevOps, which is popular. There's one called Pivotal Tracker, which I haven't used, but I've heard of it. But yeah, I'd say pretty much everyone uses Jira or one of its competitors these days.
Yeah, and if you're interested in dabbling into a product management tool or a project management tool, ClickUp is a free resource, which I'm a huge fan of. It's free for everyone. So I will post a link in the chat too if you want to check that out. But similar to the Kanban board, they have the swim lanes that you can utilize, and Yeah, exactly. Trello, GitHub. It all has a lot of built-in practices for you to also automate your roles. So that's another cool thing.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, thank you. The next question is for someone with a background in marketing wanting to become a product manager. I've read some desired skills are agile. What's the best way to get experience aside from boot camps or going back to school?
Okay, so in terms of being a product manager, that's a great question. Uh,
I can help out with this one.
yeah, thanks, Christine.
Yeah. I think so. I do product management consulting in my full-time role, and really I went from software development to product management. And really, one thing that really helped me make that transition was to get certified. So that would be for me a big piece of advice to you. There's a lot of great free resources that are online you can utilize, and we can post that on our meetup page afterwards. But try to get your product management certification. Typically with Agile, it would be more so product ownership. So they have product owner certifications. They have Scrum Master certifications. They have just Agile certifications in general that you could get. I would say first start off by exhausting your free resources. Get on YouTube. There's even Code Academy. There's Khan Academy. There's a ton of online academies now that you can utilize aside from boot camps, so that you can go ahead and start learning online for free. I think once you've really exhausted all of your free resources, then it's a great time to start looking into that paid certifications. And there's scrum.org. You can go on to their website and they will link you to a lot of those certifications that you can take. It is pricey. I believe the passing percentage is 80% or higher. So definitely do your research and become very knowledgeable in that before you take the course. And they've got also test courses that you can take too.
All right, thank you. So the next question here is, can we explore for a second the similarities and differences between product versus product management and the role of the Scrum Master versus product/product manager role? And I guess the follow-up would be, is the Scrum Master more so well-versed in a specific approach to product management, but generally play a similar role?
Okay, so product versus project, and Christina might handle this better than I do. My understanding is a project is it's something that has a beginning and an end. So I guess you could think of like building a house as a project. Like there's a point where you lay the foundation. There's a point where you put the lock on the door and you're done. And like now the house is built. Whereas a product is something like, let's just say, Facebook Messenger. Like that's something that doesn't really have an end. Like it's something that you build and then people start using, and they're constantly coming up with innovations and adding to it. And there's no like real sort of endpoint to it. I mean, that to me, that's from what I understand, that's the biggest difference between product and project.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that, Patrick. I think in terms of a project manager, they're mainly focused on time and budget. And usually there is that start and end time, and they have a set budget that they have to manage and stay within those means. I think product managers really focus more on the customer and what is the overall and continued success of that product. To your point, I think that product is different because in true agile form, they're constantly iterating on that product, and really there might not be an end goal there. They're always trying to continuously improve on what that product is.
All right, thank you.
And
Do you have? Oh, sorry.
I was going to ask the second part. So in terms of like the Scrum Master versus a product manager, I think that's really the distinction. So you've got the Scrum Master who's focused on working with the team and making sure the work is getting done, whereas the product manager, also called a product owner, is really focusing on the customer and what is the work that needs to be done in order to delight the customer. And so the product owner is out there talking to the customer and looking at the problem and finding problems in the world and coming up with suggestions, like ideas on how we can solve those problems. The Scrum Master is focused on working with the teams to implement the solution.
Yeah, that's where you'll hear the word stakeholder come in, because oftentimes my job is more client facing as a product owner. Product manager, you'll hear those terms interchange pretty frequently. Most roles do have some similarities and some differences between the two. The product owner is someone who is in charge of the product backlog. And that's another point that we can get into as well. But the product owner also is a liaison between the business and the client. And in my day-to-day role, I could be really understanding and identifying what are our clients' needs, and clients would often become stakeholders in that instance because they have a stake in the product. So what are the needs of the stakeholders? What is the client needs that they're trying to get across within this product? What is the return of investment? What is the, you'll hear something called key performance indicators come up. These are all what's driving the business because, of course, you know, we do have to keep our customers in mind and our users in mind first and foremost, but at the same time, we've got to make money on the product, right? So there has to be that pragmatism and practicality there, while also trying to really build great products for users.
All right, thank you. Next question. So, do you have to be a coder to be a Scrum Master or a product manager? And I think we already talked about the difference between a product owner and a product manager.
No, you do not have to be a coder to do those roles. In fact, there is a wonderful book, which I'm sure you can find in your local library, called The Inmates Are Running the Asylum, which is just all about how it actually can be detrimental for people who are writing the code to have the product manager role, because you're so focused on like the internals and how things work. And because you know how it works, you have this cursive knowledge, it is really hard to empathize with the user who's trying to use this thing that you're creating. So it's actually really great that we have a separation between the product people who are focused on the customers and solving the problem from their perspective, and the development team who are getting into the weeds and writing the code. I would say, you know, within a typical organization, software development organization, maybe half the people overall are writing code, and the rest are, I mean, in these like product roles or Scrum Masters, management, you know, and then of course, probably not even half, because then you've got like, you know, HR function, you've got your salespeople, like none of these people know anything about code, and they don't have to. It's like there's lots and lots of opportunities in there that are not about writing code.
Okay. I was going to ask, so I was looking at the book. Do you know the author, Alan Cooper?
Mm-hmm. Do I know him? No.
Oh,
no,
we have the book, y'all. We have it. Just saying. All right. Next question. So, does your team work in sprints when working on a project? And if so, is there a time frame based on a particular content being worked on?
Yes, we do work in sprints. So a sprint is like a 2-week iteration where we basically, so the way it works is we have this thing called a product backlog. which is a list of user stories that we want to implement. And at the beginning of a sprint, of our 2-week sprint, we have a ceremony called sprint planning, where we look at what's on the backlog and we figure, okay, based on what we did in the last sprint, we know we're completing about, like, let's just say 8 stories per sprint. So if we look at the backlog, we see, okay, here are the next 8 stories. Oh, but that one's a little tricky. I don't know if we can really do this one. It's a little funky. Maybe we'll skip that one. We'll pick this other one up. And so we come up with this forecast that we're going to do, these 7 or 8 or 10 stories over the course of the next sprint. And that allows us to be really hyper focused on this small set of functionality and not get just completely overwhelmed by all the ideas that the product owner has, and just really focus on, okay, over these 2 weeks, we're going to focus on this little bit of functionality. And ideally, we also have a sprint goal, which is like a main theme, like our North Star of what we're doing over this 2-week increment.
Okay. Hey, Arvin, I see you have your hand up. Do you have a question for Patrick? Okay. All right. Or you might be typing it in, maybe.
Oh, sorry, I was on mute there. No, was this style more a Kanban or sprint? Like, which boards do you follow?
Which one do I do?
Yeah, for the Jira boards, yeah.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. So, I know Jira is a huge, complex piece of software. I know there's like all different ways to set it up. I can't speak specifically to like how Jira is configured because it's just way complicated. I can tell you very quickly. So Kanban, what is Kanban? Kanban is the idea of these cards and the different columns and moving through the columns. Now, there is a process that some teams are moving towards, which they call Kanban, which is basically like you only have like the process with the cards. Like there's no like concept of a sprint, like we're breaking off a 2-week segment. And sometimes that can work better depending on the situation. I mean, the nature of the work. Like for example, if you're a support team, like your team's focus is on responding to the customer support issues, that often works better because you don't want to wait. Like if a customer comes with an issue, you don't want to say, okay, we'll get that next sprint, which is in 2 weeks. Like you want to get that more immediately. And so there's more of a steady stream of things that are flowing in. And it's not like we have this big long backlog of things we need to do. It's just, things are coming in and hopefully we're getting them out just as quickly. So I hope that answers your question.
All right. All right, so it looks like we have 5 more minutes. I'm just looking through and I see, so it says user story example. Oh, I'm sorry, I thought I heard someone.
No, I just had a quick question. If so I'm engineer, transitioning senior level engineer, transitioning to a tech lead role and laterally in a different company, as I'm continuing finding the organization that I want to pivot to, is it worth the extra effort to learn the new organization specific agile methodology? I come from very loose situation where we have a common board, we sprint, but other than the principles on that webpage, Agile Manifesto, there's nothing extra. There's no project management books. There's nothing extra added to it.
So you're saying that's the case in where you came from, where you're going?
Yeah, that's the case where I came from. Is it worth, as I'm looking to transition and go into that mentorship, that tech lead role, learning the new company's methodology? as part of that job and just part of the job interview process?
I think really good use of your time. Go and look at the Scrum guide, and we'll try and collect all these resources and send them out later. But the Scrum guide is basically like the definition of Scrum, and it's like a 6 or 8 page document. So
Okay.
yeah, it's like just really there's not much to it. I mean, so the way they say it's like it's easy to understand, hard to implement. But the understanding part, like if you're interviewing, like you should definitely read the Scrum guide and just understand sort of what the baseline is, and then I think you'll be well prepared to answer interview questions. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, also to piggyback off that, I think it really depends on the team that you're going on. I really think it depends on their knowledge of Agile as well, because really it does take a team that is comfortable and has done Agile in the past to know how to implement it correctly. You'll hear the term thrown around Wagile, which is, a waterfall Agile approach, which is typically what a lot of companies do, especially, Fortune 500s that have been around forever and who are now trying to go Agile. It's really hard for them to really break away from that old process into something that's more iterative. So I think a big part of that is depending on your team's knowledge. If you're still in that interview process with them, I would strongly recommend interviewing all the team members, because it's not just an interview for them on your skills, but really it goes the other way around, right? You want to know if you're setting yourself up for success for this future company that you're going to. And then you can kind of get a good understanding of where their skill sets are and kind of where they're at within the Agile process as well. I do think a lot of that too is learning on the job. I think as long as you have a lot of strong supporters around you that are very comfortable and familiar with Agile and they know how to implement it correctly, then a lot of that is again, learning on the job, especially if you're a team lead. You may be assigned the role of a Scrum Master, right? Because you're really good at helping people remove impediments, reaching out to the product owner and getting help removing any roadblocks or gaining access creds or whatnot. So it really just depends on where you're going, how skilled they are, and also if you just have that support from that team.
Okay. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Also, as you move up the ladder, as an engineer to a senior engineer to a tech lead, staff, principal, etc., it becomes less about the code and the tech skills and more about communication and relationships.
Okay, so it looks like we have one more question. All right, so as a data analyst transitioning into the product ownership / Agile space, are leadership courses worthwhile? So like Udemy, LinkedIn Learning, will these increase my hireability?
Oh boy. Different people have different ideas about, how useful those things are. Some people are actually cynical about those sort of things, and they think, if that was how you got into the industry, then you may not be that qualified. Unfortunately, there's sort of a stereotype, I guess, against these sorts of things, for better or worse. I mean, it's just what it is. I do think it's good for you to participate in these sorts of trainings and whatnot. But I do want to warn you, some people will be put off by it. But I mean, the main thing is, do you feel like you're learning? Do you feel like you're gaining understanding and you're making progress versus trying to have certain credentials? Because ultimately, nobody cares about the credentials. They care, can you work as a team player, and can you get the job done? And so that's something that if I was starting out in this industry now interviewing, I think I would really, really emphasize my ability to be a great teammate and to learn on the job, because that's really what ultimately makes a difference.
All right, so it is, oh, can we do one more question? Okay. All right, so I see there's a comment here that says there can be stigma when a candidate only has certifications, education, courses, experience, and not much hands-on experience. All right, so just wanted to point that comment out there. And then the last question we have is any advice or direction in obtaining in-person training? I'm aware that technically it's tech and it's all online, but I prefer to do in-person learning and training.
So I don't have an answer to that. I don't know, Christina or anyone else.
Yeah. Aside from joining meetups like this, so I think, you're already on the right track by going to free meetups, exhausting these resources that are out there. For example, there's a Women in Agile meetup as well. If you're interested, they have at least monthly meetups. In terms of in-person training, they're especially related to things like Agile. I would recommend checking out local boot camps. Again, still think that you should try to exhaust your free resources first before going to a boot camp, because they can be a little pricey. But they do offer at times Agile courses, product management, Scrum Master courses. Aside from that, I know that there are other courses that do offer just pure, hey, come get your Agile certification, and we'll help you do that. So I would just check out the local area around you to see, what online courses, what in-person courses there are. Aside from that, I know, for example, UNCC has a boot camp that you can check out. And then there's also Tech Talent South, who have recently rebranded to Tech Talent and Strategy. They are also local. And also, the cool thing about TTS is you can join a course with them, and then they will also hire you on as a contractor and help you get a job after. And you've got to be employed with them for X amount of years, but they're a great resource at helping you get your foot in the door.
All right, thank you. All right, so the time is now 12:20, so we're slightly over, but that's okay. I want to thank you all for being here today. So a special thank you to Patrick and Christina and Christy and all of you for being here. I hope you all enjoy your weekend and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. Thanks, Patrick.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all. Thank you.